also known as Made in the Moment. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make these mohair sleeves. This is the first one I made, and this one uses mohair and some chunky wool. And then this is the set that I made for this tutorial, and this one is all mohair. There's a lot of different variety that you can do with this. I'm just going to show you what I did and the stitches that I used in the order that I used them, but of course you can mix it up in any way that you want to. If you make this, please tag me in any pictures or videos that you post. I will show you how to make this based on your own measurements, so it's not just a specific size, a one and done kind of thing. So anyone of any size or gender can make this. If you're new to crocheting and you haven't crocheted garments before, I would recommend just kind of skimming through the whole video so you can see sort of where it's going and what's going to happen, so you're not surprised by anything. I have also tried to make this the kind of video where if you know a lot about crocheting already, you can skip through some points. So go ahead and check out the timestamps below if you're interested in any of those. If you like this video and want to support me further, all of my social media will be linked down below, as well as my Patreon, which serves as a yarn fund for my testers. So anyone who tests one of my patterns gets a portion of their yarn costs compensated, and the money from Patreon goes towards covering that. I just filmed an exclusive kind of behind the scenes video that will be up on my Patreon soon, and I have also been taking some polls of my patrons to help me decide on topics for YouTube videos. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, then go ahead and check out my Patreon. If you like this tutorial, I have some other video tutorials that are similar, as well as several written patterns on my website, which are also in my link tree down below. And I think that's all I have for you, so without further ado, let's get into the video. So what you will need is your choice of yarns. I really like the way mohair looks with this. This mohair is from Hobbii. It's pretty inexpensive when it comes to mohair. It's a mohair blend, so it does have some acrylic in it, but I find that it's holds up really nice, has a really nice fluff. And then I'm also going to use this merino wool from Stitch and Story. They gifted this to me, and I haven't used this yet, but it is incredibly soft, and I'm super excited to work with it. And then this is some leftover yarn. I'll put the name of it and the color name on the screen because I don't actually remember what it's called. Okay, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a look into my yarn choosing process. So these are the two yarns that I showed you, but I also have some other options that I think might look better. So I have this really, really lightweight, like lace weight mohair. This is what I used for the granny stripes in my other set of sleeves. This is mohair, I think it's the Marvelous Mohair base from a company called Emma's Yarn. I really, really like this. It's kind of lasted me a long time. I've used it in a lot of projects. I just can't quite decide if I like it next to this really bright pink. My other option is this really, really bright green, which I think would look awesome, but I don't know if it's quite the vibe that I'm going for here. And then my other option is this really nice lavender. It's the same exact mohair as this one from Hobbii. So this color I already did. Yeah. And then I'm choosing which one of these three I want to do next.
I like these together.
Yeah.
But with something in between.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. Ooh,
which one?
Like
that?
This is nice. Yeah, because it's like these two are like less chroma. So if you like buffer it, I think 1, 2, 3 is my favorite.
Then you also need your choice of a hook. So I think I'm going to use an 8mm hook. You can use 6mm, 10, even bigger, like a 15, just kind of depending on what your preference is for what the stitch looks like. And if you're not sure, I recommend just making up a little gauge swatch. I know that this is the one that I want to use because this is another sample that I made already. I made this with the 8mm hook, and I just like how airy these stitches are. And then you need some stitch markers to mark where the increases will be and some scissors. I'm going to start off with my mohair held double, and the way that I do this is I just use the center pull and the outer pull, I guess, and just pull from both at the same time. So you're going to start with a slip knot, and the first thing you're going to do is instead of starting with a chain, I'm going to show you how to start with a foundation double crochet row. So this is kind of like doing the first 2 rows at the same time. And I like this because I think it just gives you a cleaner edge, and it also has a lot more stretch. So this being the neckline, you do want something that's a little bit stretchier. So you have your initial slip knot, and then you're going to chain 3. And yarn over and go into the first of these chains. So this one right here. You're then going to grab the yarn and pull through, kind of keeping these 2 loops down here, and just make a chain. Then you're going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So you can think about this kind of like this is the chain row that you would normally do, and then this is the first row of double crochets. You're just doing both at the same time. So then your next stitch, you'll yarn over, insert into this same kind of the chain space that you made, yarn over, pull through, chain 1, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And if you're having trouble figuring out where the chain is, you can always put a stitch marker in there. So I'll show you how to do that this time. So yarn over, insert your hook into the chain, pull through and chain, and then place a stitch marker right in this chain space. And then you're going to do the double crochet, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So now when you are figuring out which spot to go into, it's the stitch where the stitch mark. So yarn over, insert into that chain, pull through, chain, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So the first chain that we did is going to count as a stitch. So right now I have 5 stitches. I'm going to go ahead and make 50 stitches, but you can just keep going until this kind of sits comfortably around your neckline. I will insert a clip of me with my 50 stitches so you can see how it sits on me, and then decide how many stitches you want for your own. So once you get to your desired amount of chains, you're going to join in the round with a slip stitch. Make sure that this foundation row is not twisted when you do this. So to join it, you're just going to put your hook into the top of these stitches, yarn over, and pull through both of the loops on your hook. There's going to be this kind of gap right here. You can either sew this up at the beginning or later on. I'll just show you how to do it right now. So you're going to take a yarn needle and thread this extra tail of yarn. But you're going to just go into the other side of where the yarn is. Just like that. Pull through and go up the side like this. You're basically just making a little seam to close up this gap. There might be an easier way to do this, but this is how I always do it. And then I'm just going to tie these off here. Good. And there's a fairly seamless join. So before you do the next row, you need to figure out where you want the increases to be. So the way that I think about this is for the sleeves, I want 10% of the stitches on this sleeve, 10% of the stitches here, 40% of the stitches on the back, and 40% of the stitches on the front. and the increases will go kind of in between those points. That might sound a little confusing, but it's actually really, really easy to figure out. So I chose 50 stitches partially because that fits me really well and also because it makes the math really easy. So to start with my bigger chunks, because that's where my live stitch is right now, 40% of 50 stitches is 20 stitches. So the way you figure this out is you multiply your stitch count, which in this case is 50. You multiply that by 0.4, so 40%, and then that gives you the number. You can also eyeball it. So you can just kind of, you know, these are my 4 corners, but I think doing just a tiny bit of math helps you get more accurate increases. So I'm going to count this as stitch number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm doing 10 because this is in the middle. So I'm going to count 10 more out this way so that I have 20 across the back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. So that is my 40%, and then my 10% on the side here. 10% of 50 is 5. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have marked in the first and the 20th stitch of these, if that makes sense. So there's 5 stitches in between these markers, and in between these markers there's 18 because the first one has the stitch marker in it and the last one has the stitch marker. So 1, 2 through 19, and then 20. So the stitch with the marker in is what we're going to actually increase out of. Now we have our setup round. So you're going to chain 2 and then double crochet until you get to your first stitch marker. And to double crochet, you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into this stitch right here, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, and pull through 2 of the loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2. So that is yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, grab your yarn, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And you're just going to keep doing that until you get to the first stitch marker where you're going to make an increase. So like I said before, the stitch with the stitch marker in it is what we're going to increase into. So to increase, you're going to just make a double crochet into that stitch. Then you're going to chain 2. Then you're going to make another double crochet into the same stitch. And then double crochet into the next one. Usually when I make these, I just leave the stitch markers on that first row, because once you come around to the second row, it's pretty easy to see where the increase is. But if you prefer, you can move the stitch marker from that first row into the second row, just so you don't miss it. And then you're going to continue double crocheting until you get to the stitch with the next stitch marker. And make the same increase. So double crochet, chain 2, and double crochet into the same stitch. And then you can move your stitch marker into the chain 2 space, or you can just leave it down here. And continue until you get to the next stitch marker and the next one, and then come back and I will show you how to do the next round. Okay, so I'm coming to the end of my round. I'm just going to do one more double crochet here, and then finish the round in the same way that I started it, with a slip stitch into this stitch right here. Then I'm going to chain 2 and double crochet until I get to the stitch marker and make an increase in that stitch. So once you get all the way to this chain 2 space with your stitch marker in it, you're going to make another increase. So into this space, make a double crochet, then chain 2, and make another double crochet into this space. And then you're going to make a double crochet into this stitch. This is the next stitch you go into after your increase. And you're going to continue doing this, making an increase into each corner with the stitch markers for a total of 3 rows of increases. So this first row is not an increase row. You'll have 1, 2, 3 of increases. At that point, try it on, see what it looks like. After those 3 rows of increases with the double crochets, I'm going to do 2 rows of increases with the granny stitch. And at that point, if you want to add more increases, you can do that. Or if it looks like this is just not going to be enough, you know, if you have a thinner yarn or a thinner hook, you might need more rows of increases. I'm going to finish this second row and then do a third round, and then I'll show you how to change colors and do the granny stitch. To change colors, you're going to insert your hook into the top of the stitch right here, and then take this slip knot that you already made and put it on your hook, and then pull through both loops, and then sort of loosely tighten this slip knot onto your hook, and using this kind of tail end and the end of your old yarn, you're going to tie these together in a knot, in a double knot. And then you're going to take the old yarn, oops, and set that away for later. And now you just have your new yarn to work with. So like I said, now I'm going to show you how to do the granny stitch onto here. You can do this in kind of any order that you want. You know, if you would rather do 1 row of double crochets and then some granny stitch rows, or more granny stitch rows, whatever. But this is what I did, so I'm going to show you how to do it now. So you're going to chain 3, or chain 2, I mean, and this is going to count as the first double crochet in the granny cluster. So into this same stitch, you're going to yarn over, insert, make a double crochet, and then make 1 more double crochet into the same stitch. And then the way that this doesn't like increase dramatically is you're going to chain 1 in between the granny cluster, and instead of doing your next cluster into like the next stitch, you're going to skip 1 and go into the stitch. So double crochet 1, 2, and 3, and then chain 1. So that's going to be your pattern. You can see how the chain 1 kind of sits above the stitch that you skipped. So you're going to go around like that until you get to the first stitch marker. And then into this chain 2 space, you're going to put 2 granny clusters with a chain 2 in between them. So it's basically, you're treating this granny cluster of 3 double crochets as 1 double crochet that you did previously. So 1, 2, 3, and then chain 2, and put 1 more cluster into the chain 2 space. 1, 2, 3. Then you're going to chain 1, skip the next stitch, and place a granny cluster into the next one. And you're going to go around just like that until you get back to the end of your row, and I'll show you what to do for your second row of granny stitch increases. So I've gotten to my last granny cluster. I'm going to chain 1 and then make a slip stitch into the top of this double crochet here. And then I am going to chain 2, turn my work, and make 2 more double crochets into the space here. So that first chain 2 does count as a stitch, and I'm just finished my granny cluster. I'm going to chain 1 and go back, skipping over this granny cluster and going into this chain 1 space here with my 3 double crochets. Chain 1, skip this cluster, go into this space, and once again just going around until I get to my first increase space. And once I get to this increase space, then I will make another granny stitch increase. So make my 3 double crochets for my granny cluster, chain 2, and then another 3 double crochets, chain 1. So keep going like that, making granny clusters into the spaces, increasing at the increase points, and then once you get to the end of the round, I will show you how to make the armholes. All right, my next color is going to be this really bright green. This is the Lana Grossa silk hair, and I'm going to hold this double. I'm going to start with my slip knot and then insert my hook into the top of the last stitch, pull through, and pull through again, and tie a knot on the wrong side, which is the side facing me right now, because I turned my work for the second row of granny stitch. Depending on kind of how you want this to fit, at this point you may need to do a few more rows of double crochet increases or granny square increases. This is good for me, just 5 rows of increases, but I would definitely try this on at this point and just kind of see how it sits. But right now I'm going to show you how I do my row for the establishing the armholes. I'm going to turn my work back again, so this is the right side, going to chain 1, and I'm going to do a row of single crochets just all the way around into the middle of each granny stitch and then into the chain space. So my first single crochet will go right here, and then my second into the chain space, the next one into the top, the second of the 3 in the granny cluster, and then into the chain space. This is because if we look back to this row, we've been treating this granny cluster as just one stitch and the chain space as another stitch. So this is 2 stitches, 2, 2, 2. If you end up going into each one of these stitches, then you'll increase a lot. So you're going to keep making single crochets until you get to the chain 1 space before your first increase. And instead of making your next stitch in here, you're going to chain. I'm going to chain 10 because I know that's what works for my body, you know, for under my arms. But you might have to try this on and see what works for you depending on where this hits on your body. So I'm going to chain 10, and then I'm going to find the increases on the other side. This is the same chain 1 space that we skipped on this side. So you're going to take this chain and go into this stitch right here. And make a single crochet in this stitch. So yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and then keep going around this way. And you're just going to keep single crocheting around until you get to that same stitch on this side. I'll move my stitch marker just so you can see where it is I'm going to. So this is the last stitch I'll crochet in on this side, and then on this side I will go into this stitch right here. So once I get to my marker, I'm going to single crochet, chain 10, then go into this stitch over here, make a single crochet, turn my work, and keep single crocheting until I get to the end of the round. Make a slip stitch in here, and then for just a little bit of added support on like the underarm part, I'm going to go around and make a row of half double crochets. So to half double crochet, you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull through, and then yarn over and pull through all 3, and just continue doing that all the way around. Once you get to the chain stitches, you're going to go into them, kind of go into the side like this. Just like as if you were doing your first row of stitches after your chain row. And then when you get finished with the chains, just keep going into the stitches as normal. All right, and once you get to the end of your row, you're going to make a slip stitch, and then I am actually going to chain 1 and cut my yarn here. I will insert a little clip of what this looks like so far, just so you can use that for reference. And then after that, I'll show you how to go on to the sleeves. Okay, so I finished one full sleeve first, just so I can show you kind of what's going on. And if you already know how to do these stitches, you can just sort of go off on your own. And if you need a little more help, then you can follow along with the next part of the video. So starting at the edge of the sleeve, this is the last row that we did together, I added a row of half double crochets in the green and then 2 more rows of granny stitches. Then I did 4 rows of treble crochets, 2 rows of granny stitches, 3 rows of regular treble crochets, an increase row where I increased every 6 stitches, 1 more regular row of treble crochets, and then a final row of half double crochets just to kind of finish it off. So this is what the bottom of the sleeve looks like, and I will put all of those written instructions on the screen for you if you already know how to do those stitches and you want to follow this exactly, but you can of course do any combination of what you want to do. All right, so I'm going to take the same color that I used for this last row, and I'm going to make a row of half double crochets around the edge of the sleeve. So I'm going to attach my yarn right in the middle under the armpit so that the seam is the least visible possible. Then I will chain 1, and like I said, just half double crochet all the way around. When you get to these kind of corner bits, I like to do a decrease stitch just to sort of bring it in. So to do that, you're going to start crocheting as if you're doing a half double crochet, but instead of finishing that, you're just going to yarn over again, go into the next stitch, and then yarn over and pull through all 5 of the loops on your hook. So that makes a nice little decrease in the corner, and then just go all the way around the sleeve. And once you get to the kind of increase stitch, you're just going to put 1 stitch into each one of these stitches, or granny clusters, I guess. So you are not doing an increase when you get to the sleeves. Once you get to the end of the row, come back and I will show you how to change colors and what I do for the next row. So once you get back to the end, you're going to make a slip stitch, and you can either continue on in this color, or I'm going to switch back to this light pink color, just using the same method as before with the slip knot. Chain 2. So I have my chain 2, and then I'm just going to do a row of granny stitches. So this is my 3rd, chain 1, skip a stitch into the next stitch, and I'm going to do 2 rows of granny stitches, and then I'm going to switch to treble crochets. Okay, I just finished my 2 rows of granny stitch, and I'm going to change back to my bright pink color, but you can use whichever color you like. You can add in a new color now for the sleeves, or keep going with the colors you've already introduced. So now I'm going to do a few rows of treble crochets. So to start a row of treble crochets, I always chain 3. So 1, 2, 3. And to start a treble crochet, you're going to yarn over 2 times. Insert your hook, grab your yarn, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So a treble crochet is basically the same as a double crochet, but you do an extra yarn over and an extra yarn over, pull through 2. So I'll show that to you again. Yarn over, insert your hook, grab the yarn, pull through. You have 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2 a second time, yarn over, pull through 2 a third time. So if you just compare that to the double crochets that we did, you can see that the treble crochet is just taller. Yarn over twice, insert, pull through two, pull through two, pull through two. And I'm basically just going to go all the way around, making treble crochets. When I come back around, I will join with a slip stitch and then keep making rows of treble crochets. The pattern that I've established on this sleeve is 4 rows of treble crochets and then 2 rows of granny stitches. So I'm just going to keep doing that. Depending on the width of your sleeve, you also may want to add increases. So I will show you how to do that. Once you get sort of a little bit lower than mid forearm, I would start about here doing a few rows of increases. So I'm going to work up my sleeve until it gets to that length, and then I will show you just how to do some increases. I am wearing the sleeve right now. I'm about to take it off so I can actually crochet into it, but I just wanted to show you about where it hits before I do a row of increases. I am making treble crochets, so I'm going to start my row with a chain 3. If you're doing double crochets, you might start with a chain 2. And to increase, the best way that I've found is to increase after every certain amount of stitches. So I'm going to, every 6 stitches that I make, I'm going to make an increase stitch. And I'll show you how to do that. But I'm going to count this as 1 stitch. So we have 1 stitch, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. After my 6 stitches, the 7th stitch is going to be an increase stitch, and increases are really easy. You just make 2 treble crochets into the same stitch. So instead of going into this stitch, I'm going to go right back into the stitch that I just went into. And you can see that each of these stitches have 1 stitch in them, and this one has 2, so it kind of branches out a little bit. My sleeves are already pretty wide. I do want them to have a little bit of a flare just at the bottom, so I'm doing every 6 stitches. If your sleeve is a little bit less wide, or you want a more dramatic like bell increase, then you might do it every 4 stitches or every 2 stitches if it's really not wide already. But I'm going to stick with every 6. That just works for the width that my sleeve is at already. So this is my next 6 stitches. I'm going to make 2 treble crochets into the 7th stitch and then continue on. So I am actually going to end my row with kind of the perfect amount of stitches. So this is my increase. I'm going to do 6 stitches and then increase in the 7th one, and that just happens to be the last stitch of my row. It's possible that you will not land exactly at the end of one of your increase patterns, and this is like really not a big deal. It will still kind of flare out pretty evenly. I am going to stick with just 1 round of increases. So I have finished both of the sleeves, and now it is time for everyone's favorite part, which is weaving in the ends. So what I do is I grab a yarn needle, and then you're going to thread the needle. And the best way that I've figured out how to weave the ends into such a loose texture like this is to just kind of go up and down the actual stitches. So I'm going to start by going down into the fabric a little bit, and then I will go across, and I'm going to go down through this stitch. So I'll go into this loop, around here, through here. And another tip is just kind of going back and forth in a lot of different directions so that whenever the fabric is stretched, the end doesn't just come out immediately. So if you see this right here, no matter what way we stretch the fabric, the ends are pretty secure because it's going down and then back up. I'm going to go around a few more times just to make sure it's really secure. And that is pretty secure. You can't see kind of where it goes in anywhere at all. So I'm just going to go through and weave in all the rest of the ends, and then you will finally see the modeled clips and the finished product. If you enjoyed this tutorial, then please give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. I make lots of tutorials and other just sit down chatty videos. And just a reminder that you can support me on Patreon. There will be more exclusive videos on there, behind the scenes stuff and things like that. And if you make this, then please tag me because I love seeing what people make.